For most of human history, the Arabian Peninsula was considered a harsh and difficult desert region, where scattered tribes lived and organized their lives mainly around trade routes and small settlements. Very few people could have imagined that from this distant and arid land would emerge a religious and political message that would change the course of world history. Within just a century, a new civilization inspired by Islam spread from the deserts of Arabia across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe and Asia. Cities such as Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba became great centers of knowledge, science, philosophy, and culture. Scholars working under Islamic governments made important discoveries in medicine, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. They preserved the knowledge of ancient civilizations and expanded upon it with new research. Their work later had a profound influence on the development of Europe and the modern world. However, the history of Islamic civilization is not only a story of rise and success. It also raises a question that continues to puzzle historians to this day. What were the factors that transformed a religious movement that began with only a few followers into one of the most powerful civilizations in the world? And what were the reasons that eventually caused this power to slowly weaken and divide into different regions? To understand this journey, we must go back to a time before great empires and golden ages existed. We must return to the early 7th century, to the social and political environment of the Arabian Peninsula. Before the rise of Islam, Arabian society was largely based on a tribal system. Loyalty to one's tribe and family defined a person's identity, and conflicts between tribes were common. If a member of a tribe was harmed, the entire tribe would rise to take revenge. Because of this, even small disputes could escalate into long wars that sometimes lasted for many years. Many people lived a nomadic life in the desert. They raised camels, goats, and sheep, and constantly moved from one place to another in search of water and grazing lands. Others lived in cities such as Mecca and Yathrib, Medina, where trade and markets created relatively stronger economic activity. The economy of Arabia was largely based on trade, livestock herding, and limited agriculture. Mecca was an important trading center. Merchants from the city traveled in caravans to regions such as Syria, Yemen, and beyond. Through these caravans, various goods were bought and sold. Because of this trade, some families in Mecca became quite wealthy. Another important feature of the region was its location at the crossroads of major trade routes that connected the Byzantine and Persian empires. This made cities like Mecca important commercial hubs. Mecca was not only a center of trade, but also a religious center. Various tribes would travel there to worship at the Kaaba. At that time, the Kaaba housed many idols representing different tribes and beliefs. Arabia was also religiously diverse. While many people practiced polytheism and idol worship, Jewish and Christian communities were also present in the region, and the idea of monotheism existed in different forms. In this society, men generally held greater power and authority. They served as tribal leaders, participated in wars, and made major decisions for their families. Men were allowed to marry multiple wives, and their social status was often measured by power, wealth, and the strength of their tribe. The condition of women, however, was not very favorable. In many areas, women did not enjoy equal rights with men. In some tribes, the birth of a daughter was considered undesirable, and in extreme cases, cruel practices such as burying newborn girls alive were reported. Women were usually under the authority of male members of their families and were often regarded as socially weaker. In this very environment, around 570 CE, a man was born whom the world today knows as Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He belonged to the Quraysh tribe of Mecca and was widely respected among people for his honesty, trustworthiness, and noble character. He was involved in trade and was regarded as a reliable and trustworthy person within the society of Mecca. According to Islamic tradition, when he was about 40 years old, he received the first revelation. Muslims believe this was a message from God delivered through the angel Gabriel. These revelations were later compiled into the Quran, which became the foundation of the message of Islam. In the beginning, this message called people toward the worship of one God, social justice, helping the poor and the weak, and living with moral responsibility. However, this message threatened the interests of Mecca's powerful leaders because it challenged their religious and economic system. As a result, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his followers faced severe opposition, persecution, and hardship. When the situation became increasingly difficult, in 622 CE, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his followers migrated from Mecca to Medina. This event is known as the Hijrah, and it is considered a major turning point in Islamic history. In Medina, Muslims were able to establish a new community and develop their own social and political system. It was from this small but determined community that a new religious and political power began to emerge. Over time, this group would lay the foundations of one of the fastest expanding civilizations in world history. In the early years of Islam, the greatest external opposition came from the Quraysh of Mecca. The reasons for their opposition included: their economic power was connected to the religious system of the Kaaba. They feared that Islam would weaken the tribal order. Islam openly challenged idol worship. Because of this, they took several actions: a social boycott of Muslims, violence and persecution, assassination plots, military attacks on Medina. These tensions eventually led to several important battles: Battle of Badr, Battle of Uhud, Battle of the Trench, Khandaq. However, Islam eventually grew stronger, and after the conquest of Mecca, the opposition of the Quraysh came to an end. After the death of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in 632 CE, the newly formed Muslim 632 CE. The newly formed Muslim community faced a major challenge. The most important question was leadership, because the Prophet had united various tribes under a shared faith and political system. Leadership first passed to the first Caliph, Abu Bakr Siddiq, R.A., who took important steps to stabilize the new Muslim state. After the Prophet's death, some Arab tribes attempted to break away from central authority. This led to a series of conflicts known in history as the Ridda Wars. Abu Bakr successfully suppressed these rebellions and reunified the Arabian Peninsula, ensuring that the Muslim community remained united and did not fall apart. After him, leadership passed to Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab, R.A., whose reign is considered one of the most remarkable periods of expansion in history. During his rule, Muslim armies moved beyond Arabia and confronted the two great powers of the time, the Byzantine Empire and the Sasanian Persian Empire. Both of these empires had been weakened after decades of continuous warfare with each other, creating an opportunity for the rapidly growing Muslim state. Within just a few decades, Muslims gained control over vast regions including Syria, Egypt, Iraq, and Persia. Important cities such as Damascus and Jerusalem also came under Muslim rule. This expansion was not limited to military success. Along with it came a new system of governance in which local populations were allowed to practice their own religions while being incorporated into the administrative structure of the Islamic State. The later caliphs, Uthman ibn Affan, R.A., and Ali ibn Abi Talib, R.A., continued to manage the expansion and administration of the Muslim world, although their periods of rule also saw political disagreements and internal challenges. Despite these difficulties, by the middle of the 7th century, the Islamic State had expanded from North Africa to Central Asia. Historians often ask how such rapid expansion was possible. Several factors contributed to this. Muslim armies were organized, highly motivated, and united by their faith and sense of purpose. At the same time, many people in the newly conquered regions were dissatisfied with the heavy taxation and political instability of the previous empires. In some areas, Islamic governance brought greater stability and economic fairness. Within just 100 years of the death of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Islamic world had become one of the largest political powers on earth. What had begun as a movement in a small Arabian society had now transformed into a great civilization that was about to enter its most brilliant period, its golden age. As the Islamic world stabilized and its borders expanded, a new era of knowledge and culture began, an era known in history as the Islamic Golden Age. The greatest developments of this period occurred during the Abbasid Caliphate. In 762 CE, the Abbasid rulers established Baghdad as their new capital, which soon became one of the greatest intellectual and cultural centers in the world. Baghdad was not only a political capital, but also a center of scholarship and research. One of its most famous institutions was the House of Wisdom, where scholars from different civilizations gathered. Here, important works from Greek, Persian, Indian, and other traditions were translated and studied. These scholars did not merely preserve ancient knowledge. They expanded upon it by introducing new research, ideas, and discoveries. During this period, Muslims made major advancements in the field of mathematics. The famous mathematician Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi laid the foundations of algebra and introduced mathematical principles that are still used today. His work also played a crucial role in spreading the modern system of numbers throughout the world. Significant progress was also made in the field of medicine. The renowned Persian physician Ibn Sina wrote influential medical books that were studied for centuries across the Islamic world and Europe. Hospitals were established in major cities, and physicians began adopting more advanced methods of diagnosis and treatment. Philosophy and intellectual debate were also important features of this era. Thinkers such as Ibn Rushd explored the relationship between reason, philosophy, and religion in great depth. Their writings influenced not only scholars in the Muslim world, but also intellectuals in Europe. Beyond science and philosophy, Islamic civilization was also flourishing in art, architecture, literature, and trade. Cities such as Cairo, Cordoba, and Samarkand became major centers of culture and commerce. Trade routes stretched across Africa, Asia, and Europe, allowing not only goods, but also ideas and innovations to travel between distant regions. This era demonstrates how Islamic civilization served as a bridge for preserving and expanding ancient knowledge. Many classical texts that might otherwise have been lost were carefully preserved through the efforts of Muslim scholars. For several centuries, the Islamic world remained at the forefront of knowledge and innovation. However, like every great civilization, this golden period eventually faced challenges that gradually weakened its political unity and stability. Although the political power of the Abbasid Caliphate began to decline over time, Islamic civilization itself did not disappear. Instead, new and powerful empires emerged in different regions, continuing to expand Islamic culture, politics, and influence. Among them, the most powerful was the Ottoman Empire. Founded toward the end of the 13th century, it gradually expanded its power across Anatolia and southeastern Europe. In 1453, the Ottomans captured Constantinople, the historic capital of the Byzantine Empire. After the conquest, the city became known as Istanbul and was made the capital of the Ottoman state. The Ottoman Empire ruled vast territories across the Middle East, North Africa, and the Balkans. Its strong military system, especially the elite Janissary Corps, helped maintain its power and stability for centuries. Ottoman rulers also commissioned magnificent architectural projects and established a complex administrative system that allowed people of different religions and ethnic backgrounds to live under a structured system of governance. During the same period, the Safavid Empire emerged in Persia and established a strong state in the region that is now Iran. Safavid rulers declared Shia Islam as the official state religion, a decision that had a lasting influence on the religious identity of the region. Further to the east, the Mughal Empire rose in the Indian subcontinent. It was founded by Babur, and the empire soon expanded across a vast territory. During the reign of rulers such as Akbar, the empire promoted administrative reforms and cultural harmony among its diverse population. Architecture also reached remarkable heights during the Mughal era. The most famous structure from this period is the Taj Mahal, built by Shah Jahan. Even today, it remains one of the most iconic architectural masterpieces in the world. Together, the Ottoman Empire, Safavid Empire, and Mughal Empire ruled vast territories across 3 continents and maintained the political and cultural strength of Islamic civilization for centuries. However, over time, internal weaknesses and external pressures began to challenge these empires. Like many great civilizations in history, the Islamic world eventually faced a period of political fragmentation and decline. This process did not happen suddenly, but developed gradually over several centuries due to multiple factors. In 1258, a major shock occurred when Mongol forces attacked Baghdad and destroyed the city. Baghdad had long served as a major intellectual and political center of the Islamic world. Its destruction deeply shook the region and severely weakened the power of the Abbasid Caliphate. Although new empires later emerged, internal problems gradually appeared within them as well. Political corruption, power struggles, and administrative weaknesses began to undermine state systems. For many rulers, maintaining control over distant territories became increasingly difficult. At the same time, major transformations were taking place in Europe. The Renaissance, the Scientific Revolution, and the Industrial Revolution provided European powers with new technologies, stronger economies, and more advanced military capabilities. As European influence expanded, economic and political pressure on Muslim regions also increased. By the 18th and 19th centuries, European colonial powers had gained control over large parts of Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Global trade routes shifted, and the balance of power gradually moved toward the industrialized European states. The last major Islamic empire was the Ottoman Empire, which attempted to modernize its military and government during the 19th century. However, these reforms faced many challenges. Rising nationalist movements caused different regions of the empire to break away. Eventually, after World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed, and most of its territories were divided into new states or placed under the control of European powers. Although politically this period marked a time of decline, the legacy of Islamic civilization remains profoundly influential even today. Its contributions to science, philosophy, medicine, and culture played a significant role in shaping the modern world. The story of the rise and fall of Islam is not simply the story of empires. Rather, it is the story of a civilization whose intellectual and cultural influence can still be felt across the globe. When we look back at the long journey of Islamic civilization, one thing becomes clear. Its history is not merely a list of wars, rulers, and empires. Instead, it is the story of how a powerful idea transformed societies across different continents. From a small community inspired by the teachings of Muhammad in the city of Mecca, a civilization gradually emerged that connected vast regions of the world. In a relatively short period of time, Muslim societies expanded from Spain in the west to Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent in the east. During this expansion, they built cities, established institutions, and developed systems of knowledge whose influence would be felt for generations. The rise of Islamic civilization demonstrated how unity, shared beliefs, and strong leadership can give birth to one of the most dynamic and advanced societies in history. During the early caliphates and later powerful states such as the Abbasid Caliphate, knowledge and scholarship flourished. Scholars preserved ancient texts, conducted new scientific research, and expanded fields such as mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. Cities like Baghdad and Cordoba became major centers of learning where people from different cultures and backgrounds gathered to study and exchange ideas. This exchange of knowledge helped connect the intellectual heritage of the ancient world with later scientific developments, influencing Europe and other regions of the world. But history also reminds us that even the most powerful civilizations do not remain unchanged forever. Over time, political divisions, internal conflicts, economic shifts, and the rise of new global powers gradually weakened many Muslim empires. Events such as the Mongol invasion of Baghdad, along with later global transformations, altered the balance of power. Eventually, after World War I, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire marked the end of one of the last great Islamic empires. Yet the fall of empires did not mean the end of Islamic civilization. The intellectual, cultural, and spiritual legacy built over centuries continues to influence societies around the world. Even today, millions of people draw inspiration from its traditions, values, and history. The story of Islam's rise and decline reminds us that civilizations are always evolving. They rise through unity, vision, and creativity, and they may decline when unity weakens and new global forces emerge. Ultimately, the history of Islam is not just a story about gaining and losing power. It is a story of ideas, knowledge, faith, and human achievement. One that has left a deep and lasting mark on the world and continues to influence our modern global civilization. If you enjoy deep and meaningful stories from history, like this video, and subscribe to the channel Old Moment Gold History. Here, we bring the moments of the past back to life, moments that changed the world.